Oh, I hope I didn't just jump scare you because I'm sorry. I couldn't bring myself to put on makeup today. I'm proud of myself for even filming this video because if you can't tell by my voice, I am still a little bit sick. However, I just don't like not having videos for you guys, especially because this one was a scheduled collab with Tori and Cheyenne. So make sure to check out both their videos. I'll link both of their videos down below. They're both already up because I'm coming to this a little bit late because I've been sick. But I don't like not having videos up. I don't like being delayed, especially when it's like a posted collab. So I pulled it together enough to film this. So I'm getting this out to you, but I look a little scary. So be nice. So as you can tell by the title, this is going to be books that made me love romance. So I started reading romance in 2019 was when I kind of like discovered it, and I haven't looked back ever since. So I have a list of all the books that have made me fall in love with romance as a genre, and also like certain tastes in romance. Like, what was the first dark romance that I read that made me be like, oh, give me more of this, because y'all know how much I love the dark romance. So I'm not really going to go too much into book descriptions because a lot of these books I've talked about before, but more just tell you like why I loved them and so on and so forth. So anyways, let's go ahead and jump in. And with this first book here, so you might be like, Michaela, that's not a romance. Here's my thing with it. I pre-ordered this because I wanted the little Divergent epilogue, and I hated the epilogue, but ended up loving this book. And I love this book for its like fantasy world and all of that. However, the main thing that I remember when I was reading this is I loved the romance between Syra and Akos in here. And I was like, I want more focus on that. And like there was quite a bit of focus on their romance and their relationship. However, I wanted more of that. And I was like, where can I get more of that? What books have more of this like aspect? But call me dumb, I didn't know about like contemporary romance or like indie romance being a genre. I only knew from what was like at my library, which was like 50 Shades of Grey and like historical romances. And still to this day, my library like severely lacks in its romance selection. But I just didn't really know that that existed. I didn't know about BookTube or anything like that to go to look for things with more romance. So instead, I just had to cling to the bits of romance in these fantasy books that I was loving. That like really drew me in. That's a huge part of why I love this duology, is based on their romance. So this was really what I remember first being like, I want more of just them. How can I get more of that? So that's why I'm including this. This was like my starting place. Now, here's the next part of this. I've already talked about this a little bit before. So I used to work at Family Video back when it was still open, RIP. So at Family Video, when we used to get movies in, we could pre-street them. So we would get the movies in the week before they released, so that way we could process them, have them ready to go up on shelves on Tuesday, which was always like the day that it released. And I remember seeing After come through in the inventory, and I was like, oh, this looks kind of good. Like, this sounds good. I always tried to take like one or two home every week. So I'm like, let me go ahead and take this one home. And I watched it and I was like, what is this amazingness? Like, I love those movies. Don't come at me. I don't care. Or you can come at me. I truly don't care. I love them, and you can like be quiet if you don't. Then at the end of the movie or whatever, I saw like from the adaptation of the book by Anna Todd, and I was like, well, I need to check this book out. So I get on my library, I request this first book, and I check it out, and I devoured this book. And then after that point, I looked up for the sequel, and the sequel was gonna be like weeks and weeks waiting, and I was like, nope, I can't do that. And I went and I bought the box set off of Amazon, and that was where my romance book buying started. Was after I bought this box set. As you can tell, this book is very well loved. This was like before I cared about like not cracking my spines. I've read After, I think maybe like 4 times now at this point. I feel like this is where I discovered romance truly for the first time. I didn't realize that there were stories like this out there. Like, I didn't really have friends who read a lot, or like especially any friends who read romance. So I just like didn't know what was out there and what I was missing, you know? And then when I discovered this, I was like, I need more of this. I need more stories. I was still in college No, I had graduated college at that point, but still, I wanted like books like of people my age, not like in like the 1800s or anything, not in like 50 Shades world yet, we'll get to that. But I just wanted stories like this, and I was like, oh my God, they're like getting it on in the book. I was like, what is that? Give me more of that. And this truly is where I fell in love with romance. I still to this day love toxic romances. I love college romances. I love bad boy, good girl. So many of the tropes that are in this book, I still see in my reading taste today. And we actually reread these a while back. We did an after readathon on here, and I didn't know if it would hold up, and it still did. My love for this series is never ending, honestly. I will forever love it. And it truly is what opened the gates for me, because then that's when I got on YouTube and I was like, books like, I got on Google and I was like, books similar to After by Anna Todd. And that's how I found BookTube and started watching BookTube. And then like that just, has gotten me to where I am here today in 2023. So I owe this series a lot. I absolutely love it. And I know it's not everyone's thing, but truly for me, I'll forever love this series. Okay, next, After. So then I still didn't really know about like independent romances yet. So I was looking up books that my library had. So I was watching BookTube, but then I was like, why are half these not available in my library? Because I didn't realize about like getting a Kindle in the world of Kindle Unlimited yet. So one of the next books that I remember so vividly reading is Lick by Kylie Scott. My library had this one, and I remember I checked out all 4 books at the same time, and I binged them within 3 days, I think. I read 2 of these in one day. That's how, like, obsessed I was with romance at this point. This whole series is rockstar romance, but this one specifically is it a Married in Vegas? Is this one that's Married in Vegas? I think so. It's like between the guitarist of this rock band who like I think has like a one-night stand in Vegas and ends up waking up and he's married to this one random woman. But I just remember because I had these, my parents were like gone for the weekend. I was still back living at home, and I remember like they were gone for the weekend and I just sat on my couch and I didn't move, and I read all 4 of these books and I just devoured them. I loved them. I still to this day love and treasure rockstar romances so much. Loved like them falling in love, and all of these books had like very different journeys to that like falling in love. And I think that's what I loved in After as well, was like that we saw them through every single high and every single low. And that's what I love about romance. I love seeing couples see the best and the worst in each other and choosing to always choose each other at the end of the day, and seeing them get that happily ever after. And I just like devoured the absolute shit out of this series, and still to this day I really love it. I honestly need to get these because I feel like they're just like sentimental. Last one that wasn't indie published that I discovered, and this was through a rec from Lovely Like Laura. That's like the first booktuber that I ever watched, because obviously she loves After, and that's how like I got into reading other books. And this is where it all went downhill for me. Not like downhill, but like where I am now. And that is The Deal by Elle Kennedy. So I remember I saw this as a rec. I checked it out from my library, and I fell head over heels in love with this and with this whole series. Still to this day, I've reread this series now, I think 3 times, and it still hits the same for me. And this is where my love for like hockey romances came from, and the friends to lovers. And more so with this is when I really started to love like companion series and seeing a group of friends over the course of a book. Because I remember in the Stage Dive series, like I liked that aspect. I don't remember that being a standout, where in this series I remember being so excited to look forward to the next guy's book, and like just seeing that like camaraderie across the books. I just like loved that aspect of it. I loved the college setting again. I really loved Garrett and Hannah's like mutual respect and how like they truly had like a friendship developed, and then that turned into more. I don't know, guys. These are just like still really special to me. The Mistake is my favorite out of them all, but The Deal, this is still like one of my tried and true books when someone asks for like beginner romance recommendations, like some of my friends who like are trying to get into it, I still refer them to the Off-Campus series, because this, I think it's like very easy to digest. They're quick to read, they're fun, they're lighthearted, but they still have like their serious moments to it, and they're hockey. Who doesn't love a hockey romance? Like, find me a person who doesn't like a hockey romance. I feel like I don't know anyone who's like, not hockey. I feel like it's just universally loved, But this book right here is where the indie lover in me was born, and that is Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. So this book, I took so long to purchase it because I did not buy books, and I did not buy books that I had never read before. Like, that was unheard of for me at this point. So this sat in my Amazon cart for, I'm not joking, like months, because I was like, but there are books at the library that I can read. Like, I don't need to buy a book. Like, why would I buy a book? And if I haven't even read it, how do I even know if I'm gonna like it? But then finally I ended up caving, and I bought it, and I have never looked back since. So obviously, I feel like this is a very popular book. Penelope Douglas is my favorite author still to this day, and so many of their books are so special to me, but Birthday Girl in particular, because it is my first ever indie romance that I read. It's slow burn, it's an age gap, it's forbidden, it's an ex's dad's romance. It's forced proximity. Again, like before I even knew what tropes were, I was starting to pick up on certain things in here, being like, oh, I really like the fact that like he's her ex's dad, you know, before I knew to like go on YouTube and like search like ex's dad romance recommendations. And I still to this day, independent romances are what I read predominantly. I maybe read 5% non-indie romances. Like I'm an indie romance person through and through, and this is where I can accredit my love for that. This is one of the reasons too I ended up buying a Kindle, because I was like, well, I need to read more Penelope Douglas books and my library doesn't have them. So I guess I'm gonna need to get a Kindle, and I got a Kindle, got KU, and I haven't canceled KU since the day I got my Kindle. So, and I don't foresee myself ever canceling KU, honestly. I just love it with my whole heart. And honestly, I really need to do a reread of it because I'm feeling that for this summer. You know, this would be a good one to reread this summer. I would still consider that book in my top 10 books of all time. Okay, I got 4 more books, and this is where I'm getting a little bit more trope specific of like, these are the first books I read in certain tropes that then like tipped me over into like diving deeper into that subgenre of romance. So first up, I'm just gonna go in order, and that is The Unrequited by Saffron Kent. This was my first ever student-teacher romance that I ever read. I've never looked back. Y'all know here, student-teacher is one of my all-time favorite tropes. I read pretty much any book that says student teacher in it, and it's just a tried and true trope for me. Whenever I'm feeling like I'm getting slumpy, I'm like, you know what, let me pick up a student teacher, because that trope just does it for me. I absolutely love it, and I can accredit it back to this book here. This one is a college professor and student romance, and there's cheating in it, and I remember just being like, oh my god, they're cheating. Like I was scandalized. Now it takes a lot to scandalize me in a book, but at the time I was like, oh my god, they're doing that. She's joining his class when she's not even a part of it. She's like stalking him. I was like, what is this? But it was so addictive, and I remember I literally couldn't put this book down. And still to this day, I mean, obviously student teacher just remains supreme for me. Saffron Kent is still an author that I really enjoy their books, and specifically I remember some of the like spice scenes in here. I was like, oh my god, wow, because at the time still that was kind of like foreign territory for me, but now, I mean, now this stuff in here probably wouldn't faze me. Love it. Love. Next up is my first ever dark romance I ever read, which is Corrupt by Penelope Douglas. Like I said, as soon as after I read Birthday Girl, I was like, I need to get a Kindle so that way I can read more of their books. And The Devil's Night series was the next series that I picked up from her. Actually, no, I think I read Punk 57 first before I read Devil's Night. But Corrupt is really what I consider like my first dark romance. Still to this day, I don't even consider this book that dark in terms of like my taste now, but at the time this was very different. This is very much like kind of a revenge book at first, because the hero like hates the heroine and is trying to like get revenge on her for sending his friends to prison, and like his friends get out and they're like harassing her. And I remember one scene in particular, I think it's either Michael or even is it Damon that's in like her driveway at night. Like something happens in her house and she's kind of freaked out, and she looks out in the driveway and one of them is standing there in one of their masks. And I remember being like genuinely scared. Like I was reading it at night and I was like, oh, this is kind of freaky. I just remember loving the thrill of that and loving the thrill of kind of being like scared and certain things, like pushing my boundaries a little bit in here, especially between what I deemed like okay between two people and like two characters. Like this definitely started to push that boundary a little bit for me. And I remember loving that feeling of kind of being like, am I supposed to be liking this? Am I supposed to be rooting for this? And that still to this day, I love pushing my boundaries with the books that I read in terms of like what is deemed quote unquote normal or like okay by society standards. Like I love that, and that's why I love forbidden taboo books, is I love pushing that boundary and pushing my boundaries. And I can kind of attribute that back to this book in particular, because this is the first time that I remember kind of having that feeling and being like excited to have that pushed a little bit within me. And I still love the Devil's Night series so much. Still one of my favorite series of all time. Okay, last two. So now Bound by Honor by Cora Riley was the first ever Mafia book that I ever read, and it definitely has still shaped my Mafia taste. I love Cora Riley's Mafia universes. They are very like old school Mafia, which I feel like you don't really get in a lot of Mafia books now. And I still find I like newer Mafia books. There are certain books that I've read, like Sophie Lark's World feels very different than this, but I can appreciate both. But there's always a part of me, I think, that is going to love like this old school kind of like traditional Mafia vibe. I remember in this one, once again, like Luca cheats on her, and I remember being like, but then also like take him back. Like, I would have never thought that I would feel that way about characters, but I remember in this, like, rooting for them so much. I remember just being completely sucked in. And you almost feel like you're watching, like, an old school mafia movie when you're reading these books. Even though I get why some people don't like them as much, because a lot of the women, you know, they don't have, like, a role in the mafia. They are just kind of, like, married to these men, and it's more about, like, them dealing with their relationship and, like, the men dealing with the mafia stuff. I personally, I like that in here because I think it's done well. I also can see why some people wouldn't like that as much. Totally fair. It's just all about your preferences. But for me, this was where my mafia obsession started, and where I was like, I need to read more mafia books. Like, I would have never thought when I started reading after that I would ever be like, oh yeah, I want to read about the Italian mafia and, like, an arranged marriage. Never would have thought that I would be into that until I read this, and I was like, oh yes, I'm very much into that. Thank you. And last but not least is my favorite romance series of all time, and why I love taboo, age gap, forbidden romances so much. And I feel like y'all knew this was coming, Balanced by Lucia Franco. I read this for one of my first ever reading vlogs on my channel. It's, like, still one of my, like, most popular videos, which I hate it because I think I'm so awkward in it, but it's my first ever banned, forbidden, and taboo reading vlog where I read 5 banned, forbidden, and taboo books, and I've done one of those vlogs every single year since I've started my channel. I really enjoy doing them. But this one was in the first one that I ever did, and I truly, out of all the books that I've ever talked about here, I don't think I've ever been so consumed by a series as I was with this one. Not even, like, after, not even the off-campus series, not even the Devil's Night series. This series truly captured me in a way that nothing else ever has before. I read this first book for a vlog, but then this was back at the time that I was very disciplined with my reading. I was like, well, I can't start book 2 until I finish this vlog. So I finished that vlog, and then I remember this series got banned again off of Amazon, so I quickly had to go on. I, like, ran downstairs, grabbed my Kindle, and bought the other 4 books, because I was like, I need these right now before they, like, go away. And my Kindle, I swear to you, didn't leave my hand for, like, 5 days while I read the next 4 books. I was reading, I literally remember I was, like, reading in the shower. Like, I propped my Kindle up outside of the shower, and I would, like, literally, I had my towel hanging there, and I would dry a finger, and I'd click the next page, and then I'd go back to, like, shampooing and reading. I, like, dry my finger, click to the next page. Like, I literally couldn't put this down. I was taking my Kindle everywhere that I went with me while I read this series. Rhea and Kova are the definition of soulmates to me. Once again, you want to talk about a series of characters seeing the highest of highs and the lowest of lows together, and truly the growth of characters. Who Rhea and Kova are in this book are not who they are in Dismount. I mean, that essence is still there, but they grow so much individually and together that is still what I look for. I love seeing characters grow together, but also individually on their own. And I don't want the characters, I still want that essence of them to be there, but I don't want them to be the same exact people that they were when the book started. And that is, like, this is the prime example of that. Like, I've never read anything like this. I've never been addicted to a series like this ever since. I don't think I ever will. There's something about the series that will forever and always be my absolute favorite. I treasure it forever. It's obviously very forbidden, and I remember loving that. I loved the sneaking around. They had, like, multiple aspects of them sneaking around, but I loved that aspect of it, and, like, being on edge of, like, when are they gonna get caught, like, they shouldn't be doing this, and seeing them, like, fight that. Like, still to this day, that's my favorite thing in a forbidden or taboo romance, is when they're really fighting their attraction and, like, fighting the fact that they want things that they shouldn't. They really do that in here. I hate when, like, forbidden books, they, like, don't even fight at all, and they're like, boop, we're together. No, I want them to fight it. I want that angst. I want that drama. I want that toxicity. I want that love. I want that rage. There is a scene in book 4 that truly is, like, my favorite scene I've ever read in my entire life. Like, everything for 4 books was building up to that moment, and to see it all explode and to see the reaction between those two, it's just mesmerizing. I'll never be able to shut up about this series. I know it's controversial. I don't care. It's fiction, and it's truly my favorite thing ever in the entire world. So, okay, that is all the books that made me love romance. I am a romance reader through and through. I remember I used to try to read thrillers, and I liked them, never really, like, loved them. I never was, like, a fiend about reading. Like, I used to maybe read 5-6 books a year tops until the end of 2019, and now I read over 100 books every single year, and I always have a book that I'm reading. I'm never not without a book, and I never want to look back, and I don't think I ever will look back. I love romance books so much, and I never see that changing. I love the romance community. I love being on BookTube. Well, my Bookstagram is not necessarily the best, but I love being on there. So Anyways, I'm just very happy that Cheyenne asked Tori and I to do this video with her. So like I said, make sure that you check out their videos. I'll have both of them linked down below. Thank you for hanging with me while I don't sound 100%, while I'm not like fully myself here, but I appreciate you guys sticking around and watching with me. So anyways, that is it for today's video, and I will see you when I see ya.